So, me and Brad here have Alison Rabschnuk at Freight Farms, and just to kind of kick off the conversation here, who are you, Alison, and then also what do you do at Freight Farms?
Great. Well, nice to see you both. Thank you for having me on. I am the Director of Business Development at Freight Farms. So I've been in the role here for about a year and a quarter. And prior to this, I had a quite circuitous path, I think, to where I am today. So started out in very traditional advertising and marketing in San Francisco several decades ago, working on brands like Levi Strauss and Gap and Taco Bell. Eventually got into the digital advertising space and from a sales perspective, and really then found my passion about 8 years ago when I got into the plant-based foods world. So I've been vegetarian and now vegan for a total of about 32 years, and I'm very passionate about not only healthy eating, animal welfare, but also sustainable food systems. So worked in that space in a variety of roles, and then was approached about Freight Farms. And I think one of the joys for me is not only the impact that the company is providing and the incredible technology and unique technology that you've developed, but it's also that it's in my backyard. First job I've ever actually had in Boston, having worked remotely for about 28 years.
Well, welcome home.
Thank you.
So when you first got approached at Freight Farms, what really spoke to you? Was it based off of the mission? Was it the technology? Like, what piece really spoke to you and drew you in to Freight Farms?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in the work I had done around trying to solve the many problems within our food system, one of them was always getting food to food deserts, which that really resonates with me. It's quite sad how in a place like Boston we're surrounded by so many different choices and so much fresh food, and then you go out into many parts of our country and literally there's nothing within a 45-minute drive. So that spoke to me. And then I think the other part is absolutely the sustainability benefits of hydroponic farming, and specifically in the Freight Farm with the low water usage and aspects like that.
And so when you kind of look at like some of the things with Freight Farms, new technology, we obviously had a conversation with Dave talking more about the prop side of things, but maybe from more of your perspective is, on the BD side, right? What really drives you to the excitement in seeing some forward-looking stuff at Freight Farms?
So in my role in business development, I attend a lot of trade shows, and given that, and you've already probably touched on this, but our customer base at Freight Farms really ranges from so many different segments, from small business farmers to educational institutions. We have a hospital, we have nonprofits. So there really are so many different use cases. And so we attend trade shows in a lot of those different sectors. And so I'm meeting with a lot of different people. And just the excitement. So we'll be at a trade show and we have this nice backlit banner, but so do a lot of other companies. And people come up to our booth and they say, what do you do? And a lot of times we seem to be maybe a little bit out of place. If it's an education show, they're selling chalkboards and books, and all of a sudden they have a booth with a farm. And people get so excited by the possibilities. And the possibilities, as are just endless. So from the teaching vehicle, the community engagement possibilities, obviously the food supply, the sustainability aspect. That's what's so exciting, is realizing that our technology can really fit so many gaps in curriculum and food supplies, etc. So it's that, I think that's what's just so exciting, is seeing the excitement on other people's faces.
I'll pass it on to Brad now to kind of dig more deeper into
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, just again, caveat, we're here in the R&D heart of Freight Farms in Boston. So it's a working site. So you'll hear fans, you might hear a drill, and we're gonna keep it in the best we can, as long as it's manageable. But wanted to have the conversation because when we started Freight Farms, so many years ago, the idea was, in a lot of ways, anyone could grow food anywhere, and like what will that turn into? What will that mean? What kind of impact that will have? And where I've been spending a lot of my time is thinking, what's the highest sort of societal application of this technology? It sounds broad and grandiose, but it's a good place to think. And I think in your role, wanted to sort of just think about and hear about what are the most, you said all these different segments.
Yeah.
Like, let's just, let's pick one. Let's pick, the most interesting sort of enterprise application that you've seen.
Sure.
And tell me about it.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to pick one, but I would say I'd probably pick the hospital segment.
Okay.
And it's one that we haven't really penetrated very fully.
Okay.
So at this point, we have one customer, Advent Health. So this is a hospital chain that is mostly in the southeast, also somewhat in the west.
Okay.
They have, I think, 53 campuses. And about 4 years ago, the VP of nursing at Advent Health in Celebration, Florida, which is in Orlando, really close to Disney, basically came, I think she saw a segment on the news about freight farms.
Okay.
And it just started the wheels turning, right?
Yeah.
As food is medicine has really gained a lot of traction over the past several years as an initiative. I think that's really what kind of drew her to this idea. And so it took them a little bit to get internal buy-in because it was a strange concept, right, for a hospital to have their own farm. But she made it happen. And so they actually have it at their Celebration campus out in the parking lot.
Nice.
And the result from just that one farm after the first year or two of running it was a 238% increase in salad bar sales.
Wow.
So you would think, I thought very wrongly that in Florida there's plenty of fresh produce that's grown. And apparently that's not the case. So
Right.
they actually get food from their distributor just like we do.
Yep.
A lot of it arrives dead on arrival. They had a significant amount of food waste and
Sure.
the quality was really low. So once they actually were able to grow their own produce hundreds of feet from their Celebration Cafe, again, people were so excited. They added 28 hours of salad bar access per week.
Really?
As well.
Huh.
And now they're really starting to see as a community just how much food is important as is medicine, right? So it's not just about prescribing pills, it's about really prescribing and offering really fresh food.
Yeah.
So that's been exciting.
And so the salad bar, you said they added 28 hours on a weekly basis. So is that salad bar, that's for the nurses, for the doctors?
It's for all the staff,
visitors?
and the staff are now thrilled.
Yep.
And it's also for the people visiting the hospital, and they went through the very extensive certification process of getting it approved for patients.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yes. So now patients, who are eating certain diets are able to select a green salad, and it comes from the freight farm. So the program has been so successful, they've purchased 2 more. So they now have those 2 in a different location, and the goal is to supply other Advent hospitals that are in that area, with the eventual goal, they've told us, of expanding across all 53 campuses.
Wow. I mean, you give me those numbers, and then you're like, yeah, let's replicate that at every campus.
And there are thousands of
Yeah.
hospitals in the United States. There are some very forward-thinking hospitals. Actually, Boston Medical Center started a program a number of years ago where they actually do have a prescription food program. So if you have a certain diagnosis, the doctor can prescribe you literally a prescription to go into their food pantry, and it's all healthy foods, a lot of fresh produce.
Yep.
To help. So I think that's for me, I'm hopeful that that's going to be the way of the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, my newest endeavor is neck deep in food as medicine. It's where we live, it's what we focus on. So I was not aware of that particular, I knew Advent Health was a customer. I didn't understand the dynamics, so I'm really glad I asked the question and you answered. Because I think, all of the things you said, we're seeing a lot on we're more on the fulfillment, logistics, connecting, healthcare to food in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And so there's even more synergies there. I might be spending a little more time on highest application of freight farms might be to make more of these programs happen, which would be fantastic.
We should talk.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're doing. Here we are. Let's chop it up. But no, so I mean, so you've got healthcare. We talked before the episode briefly, and we've had some online conversations. I've been again in that vein of where can the technology that I and we invented, and has been progressed beyond my wildest dreams by Dave and others, and so many hardworking people behind this wall making all sorts of noise off air, I think. Where's the highest application of that technology? take me back to idealistic Brad in like 2009, being like, you know what, I want to change the world. You know, in the nonprofit space, you know, like, you know, we've had some dialogue around family foundations and different initiatives. You know, in that vein, like, put on your idealistic hat. You know, like, what are the initiatives, what are the things you've seen or are seeing that, you know, you just kind of go, wow, like, that's going to be, when that happens, because I'm going to make it happen, is going to just be fantastic. And like, is that thing? What gets you excited in that space?
So one thing I'll mention, this is actually not Freight Farms technology specific, but it is hydroponic technology, is we had a visit from a team from NASA a few weeks ago. And they are working really hard to basically figure out how to grow fresh food for their astronauts for the Moon to Mars mission, which is supposedly going to take place in the 2030s, and it's going to take at least 3 years. And, you know, there's a real psychological component. Obviously, the astronauts could just take pills for those 3 years, right? To get all the nutrients they need.
Yeah, technically true. Yes.
Technically true. But there is a real psychological aspect to needing and wanting fresh food.
Yeah.
And, you know, of different textures and whatnot. So, anyway, that was just a little sidebar. I thought that was really fascinating. But yeah, I mean, you know, when we look at trying to do the most good, I guess, you know, to your point about the foundations, you know, there is a real need to try to pair this real, you know, changeful technology, impactful technology with organizations that have the money to really make the impact, and, you know, especially those who have a lot of global connections. And so I do think getting into more family foundations is going to be a critical part of this. You know, our work with food banks is also really energizing to me. We have, I think, about 7 or 8 customers currently, and, you know, my notion prior to working with them was that they were getting a lot of food donated, and come to find out they actually have to buy a lot of it, so they have to use their donations, you know, from different supporters, and actually purchase fresh produce. And a lot of it is just what's available. It's not culturally relevant to their population. And so that's been really exciting to see how food banks are being able to use this to have a real consistent, high quality, and culturally relevant array of foods, which, you know, really dignifies the people who are coming to the food banks.
Interesting. I mean, it's funny, I want to pull that thread a little bit. Because I know we've done, on the Freight Farm side, done work with kind of organizations that are downstream of the food banks sometimes. So like YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, things like that, you know, pandemic and post-pandemic and, you know, the new pandemic world, whatever we want to call that, you know, took on a lot, you know, to serve their community. And a big piece of that was food. And so, you know, curious, you know, what kind of activity are you seeing in there? You know, what are the interesting applications that, you know, you've seen or be a part of, or you want to see more in the future?
For nonprofits? Specifically? I mean, you know, we have Lotus House, which is a shining example of a nonprofit. They're basically the largest women's and children's shelter in the U.S. They're down in Florida, Miami, Florida. And they use the farm not only for the obvious of supplying their dining hall with fresh produce, but they're also providing it as a therapeutic outlet for the moms and kids who most of them have experienced homelessness coming in there, as well as domestic violence. And so I love that aspect of our farm too. So again, it's not just the productive, you know, workhorse of a farm, but it also provides therapy. It's a great environment to be in. It has, you know, rote tasks, which are very calming for different people. So that's, I think, something that's exciting. And yeah, Boys and Girls Clubs, the one especially down in Metro South here in Massachusetts has been a shining example. They have 3 of our farms. They provide work opportunities, and you know, it's great for these kids. In fact, I went and volunteered there a couple months ago and was there with a bunch of middle school girls, you know, and they loved it. They said it's one of the more fun jobs they've ever actually had.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, so following up on that, because I mean, in the BD role, a lot, I've never held a technical BD role in my life, just kind of founded companies and just kept doing that. But a lot of that is business development. But a lot of it is understanding and then setting customers up for success. You know, like understanding, do you have the right expectations? You know, do you have the right, you know, support systems, infrastructure, what have you? When it comes to installing a piece of hardware, that's pretty straightforward. It's like, do you have enough space? Do you have water? Do you have power? specs. Bob's your uncle, it gets installed. I'd love sort of under the hood a little bit, as you've qualified a lot of different foundations, institutions, enterprises, who might be listening, might not, or thinking about like, oh, everything you've just said sounds fantastic. Like, how do I think about this? What would you advise them in terms of like, make sure you think about X, Y, and Z, because that's going to be the difference between like getting to that next step towards success versus not.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think our sales team does a fantastic job of making sure people are going in eyes wide open with this, because it's not just a vending machine for lettuce.
Yeah.
So that's something we talk about a lot, and I think the biggest concern when it comes to institutions is the labor piece.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
And we've had conferences this year, working with universities, working with K through 12 schools, and the times that Freight Farms programs have failed on campuses is when it's given to somebody who already has a full-time job.
Yep.
They weren't the decision maker, and all of a sudden it's, hey, head of the science department,
Yeah.
you're now running the freight farm.
Yeah.
And so it's up to them to not only fit it into their existing job, but find, basically a group of volunteers to help run it. So that's why we do really set people up for success, really ensuring that they know what it's going to take. And it's not only the putting the seeds into the grow pods and transplanting and harvesting, it's the maintenance. It really needs to be understood as a piece of technology.
Yep.
So just as you can't just drive a car for 150,000 miles without doing anything to it.
Right.
We need to make sure that they understand the full program. But also, and again, and that's not really a negative. It's really to ensure that it's going to be a high performing program, whether it's at a nonprofit or a for-profit institution.
Yeah. So I guess on that, I'm thinking about, like you said, can't just be dropped in the lap of somebody who already has a full-time job.
Right.
Congratulations, you're now working 120%. But generally speaking, these enterprises don't have farmers sitting around saying, hey, give me a farm, I can't wait to work.
Sure.
What's been the most interesting sort of corporate team member turned farmer that you've seen?
Well, it's kind of interesting with Advent Health. It's actually the VP of nursing's son who ended up becoming the farmer. He did have hydroponic experience.
Great.
In a different industry, but he was able to transfer that, and he's now really successful.
Wow.
And while it's ideal for somebody to have farming experience and kind of agriculture experience, obviously it's not necessary. We do provide a lot of support and training here in Boston, but I think that was a really interesting approach. We also do have a loose partnership with Green City Growers here in Boston.
Yep.
So that's a group of people who are basically managing other people's farming enterprises. They already do manage a few freight farms in the Boston area. So we often refer them if they can't find anybody. We have a good job description that we provide our customers. So if they are going to go hire somebody, a lot of it must be very detail oriented. Is ideally passionate about sustainability and agriculture. So, but we're eager to help people find the right person.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I mean, shout out to Green City Growers. They were a classmate of ours, I think, in Mass Challenge 2012. So, aging the company and myself very dramatically there. But we were super early days. We were both just like, cool plants, yes, awesome, friends, high five. And now it's nice to see like the organizations have grown and found how we can support each other, which is really cool. So on the other side, like similar to that question, international has been a big part. Not surprisingly so, given the constraints of the world and what the technology can do, and partially what we set out to do. On those international applications, I had asked Dave Harris a question of, there was a period of time where it's like, I'd walk into the office and be like, where in the world is Dave Harris? Because he was launching farms all over the world. In the installs you've seen, what was the most intriguing, most interesting, install that you've seen internationally that's in the roster? Yeah,
that's a good question. I would say probably a place like the Faroe Islands or Turks and Caicos, where the farm again is solving a real need, which is in the case of Turks and Caicos, it's a non-arable island. And prior to that, this 5-star resort was FedExing in microgreens.
Yep. Oh yeah, Dave
Right?
was mentioning. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, at a very high, actual cost and also a really big sustainability cost. So the fact that they can now grow everything, on the island with very low amount of water is really intriguing to me.
Yeah.
And then the Faroe Islands, I think that's a great business. They analyzed the price of lettuce in the local markets and realized that they could actually run a super profitable business and supply, again, really healthy, fresh product to that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I love that's one of the things I always highlight in my BD work, which is the fact that the farm can be used in such extreme climates. And when people hear that and they see the pictures in the slide deck of one of them is basically looks like a desert, the other one is surrounded by snow, insulating it.
Yep.
They really start to get it.
Yeah.
And Svalbard, Norway, I think is another cool one, right? I mean, it's like the northernmost part, one of the northernmost parts, I think, of the world.
Really?
And so it's like the super northern tip of Svalbard, where I think they only get, probably they're only about 2 or 3 months where they can grow anything.
Oh.
And so they have a couple of our farms.
Is that one of
there.
those regions that it gets dark year round?
It gets dark.
Or like
it gets
24 hours
dark
for a
in
period?
September, and the sun doesn't come up until May.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've always wanted to have already visited that kind of place. I don't know how. Visiting, I'd be like, this might be depressing.
Yeah, right, right.
I'm sure the people there are very happy when it is sunny.
Agreed. But I mean, so to this point, too, I mean, there are so many international opportunities that we have yet to even uncover.
Yeah.
So I think the Middle East represents a huge opportunity. It's also important to know beforehand, so what are they growing? What are they eating in certain places around the world? Because they actually don't eat a lot of produce in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
So
and I mean, you might not know the depth answer to the question, but is that an availability thing? Is that a preference thing? Is it available to them, but they just don't want it? Or
look, I think the Maldives is a great example. We had a call with several people from the government there, and ultimately their diet is mostly around seafood, and they actually don't incorporate a lot of produce, probably because they haven't been able to grow it.
Right.
But they have a big tourist industry.
Sure.
And the tourists want fresh salads, and so so there is still an opportunity. It just might not be with the local population.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're coming up on time, and so you was curious. I had one question, and it escaped me for a second, so I apologize because I got all excited about the Maldives. I was like, now there's a place I want to go visit. Speaking of tourists, I mean, I think in terms of areas of the world, because I feel like in the, call it 12, 15 years I've been looking at this space developing in the area, controlled environment ag, vertical farming, kind of goes in cycles. And I feel like there's every few years that all the companies in the space are announcing Middle East. And then it's like, no, we're going over here, it's like whack-a-mole of hotspots. Yeah. I guess at freight farms, it's been relatively consistent, mostly because we've just kind of been, for the most part, heads down, not getting caught up too much in the hype.
Sure.
And so we have this platform. It's in how many countries? Do you know?
42.
42. Okay. So we're in 42 countries around the world at this point. Is there an area that's kind of come back to the surface again? What's the latest indoor ag hotspot? Because I'm out of the loop. I'm not getting the calls anymore. My feedback loop is lagging. You're real time.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I would say most of our demand today is still in the United States.
Yep. Okay.
And I don't know whether that's just an awareness, thing that just we're known more here. And honestly, even though we only make up 4% of the global population, there is still so much opportunity for us here in this country. For example, we're in about 40 colleges and universities. There are over 4,000 colleges and universities here. Same with K through 12 schools, 128,000 of them. We're in about 40 of them. So that's not to say we're not focusing on international. We also only came out with our international model, which is the 60 hertz this summer. I'm sorry, 50 hertz, which is this past summer. So really, I think we're going to be increasing our work. And we get inbound leads from all over the world. And I couldn't tell you where specifically, there maybe the hot pockets are.
Yeah, okay.
But, I think Europe, for many reasons, is very interested. And especially just given, I think, the sustainability push. So I would imagine that's probably where most of the leads are coming from.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, interesting. I just wanted to get the real ear on the ground kind of a perspective on where things are happening. So, Alison, this was fantastic. Thanks for taking time and joining
Thank you.
us.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
You know,
great
just to
meeting
kind of
us.
cap this off, I think with the conversation with Dave earlier, you kind of had a little bit of a call to action. So I guess I wanted to give you the opportunity, especially as the BD person at Freight Farms, right? What would be your call to action to someone watching who maybe wants to engage with Freight Farms or understand more about all the offerings that you have?
Yeah, I would say please get in touch. And we love to give people tours of our farms. That's honestly, it's like the proof is in the pudding.
Yep.
And so we welcome anyone who's in the Boston area to come and look at our farm at our headquarters. However, we also have farms in all 50 states, U.S. states, and so we're really happy to try to set up any connections that we have with existing customers who are willing to give tours of the farm. But yeah, it's a fantastic tool that can really solve so many problems, and we're really happy to kind of help people understand how we can do that with their specific agendas.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.